loss, it's one of the many ways to fight osteoarthritis pain. For more information on managing pain, go to fightarthritispain.org.
Welcome to It's a Woman's World, where we'll meet achieving women making a difference in our community. I'm Carolyn Bruna. Our guest is Dana Theus, leadership consultant and founder of InPowerWomen.com. Welcome, Dana.
Welcome, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, I'm glad you're here. Actually, we met through LinkedIn, exactly.
That's
yeah,
right. And then your Power Conference.
And then I invited you to come to the Power Conference, and you did.
That's right.
And somehow we've become off and on online friends.
That's
and
right.
so I'm excited to have you. It's nice because
Thank
your research is very interesting to us as research on women. And I want to read something first about you.
Okay.
It says, over the last 25 years, Dana has been a corporate executive and consultant learning the ropes of leadership and management at Fortune 100 companies, roller coaster startups, government agencies, and nonprofits of all sizes. She's recently focused her leadership development and practice on helping professional women reclaim their relationship with power. So that's Empower Women. I love it. That's what we all need, is to reclaim. And how did you kind of get this? I know you're from your variety of experiences. How did you get to the point where you decided to focus on women reclaiming their relationship with power?
I never intended to focus on women. I never really intended to focus on power. But I started out as a marketing executive. And in my marketing career, I dealt with a lot of leadership teams, particularly as I was in strategic marketing and branding and identity work. And with men and women at senior levels, I noticed this kind of game they played with power. And what I mean by that is that they focused on external power, like money and authority and scope of responsibility. And many of them became impoverished when it came to their internal power.
Are you talking about the men or the women or both?
Both. And it was like the higher you got in your career, the more you were seeking and achieving external power, and yet the less you invested in your internal power. And you get to this point of no return. You get to this point that's just very hard to sustain. And so my leadership work, I moved out of marketing into leadership because of that, because of this desire to help senior leaders in our world invest in their internal power.
I see.
So when I started talking about this as a leadership consultant, women flocked to me. And women came to me and they said, I want to know more about this, and came in various forms, mostly through blogging and online, which is where we met.
Yes, yeah.
And I began to realize that women really were attuned to this idea of internal power. And so I began speaking more directly to them and realized that women, all of us, were confused about the idea of power. And I don't have to go into everything that the feminist, history has told us about why that is. But we're confused about power, and we struggle with our relationship with it because it means so many things that have victimized us over the years that we don't want to become what we have become victim to. And yet, this internal power is not about that. It's very accessible to all of us. And so InPower Women is my effort to reach out to women and help them learn the vocabulary of power that's accessible to them all the time so they're never powerless, and then claim their external power in the world from a place of authenticity.
I see. Yeah, that's very interesting. And I'm curious about these definitions of power, and I like your separation of internal and external, because I don't believe we think about that. We think of power, and I guess you think of external, really, where we should be thinking of internal that then leads to or gives us the strength to do something with the external. Is that right?
That's right. And actually, when I was thinking about this and researching it early on, I call that external power. Like if you say to the normal person walking down the street, what do you think about power? The thing that comes to them, to all of us, is what I call the despot king. Our cultural archetype about power is the king that can say, off with your head. It's the ultimate absolute power. And it's perpetuated in our current stories and myths, you know, with just look at any action movie, right? And it's sort of like what we think of as power. And yet, and physical power matters, you know. There's a lot of places in the world that matters.
Yeah.
But in our economy and in our society here, physical power isn't what it's really all about. It's not what's making the world work. It's this internal power that allows you to control your thoughts and your energy and your actions and your words and your intentions. And that internal power is much more important. I don't know if it's more important today than it was back in the you know, the ancient king days, but it's certainly very important now. And as I began to separate these things and talk about them as separate, that's when people said, yeah, I get that. I understand that. And all of a sudden this internal power is accessible to me because I can separate it. And I can see that it's harder to achieve and sustain external power if I don't have this internal power that I've invested in.
Yeah. We also need a good definition of power, and I guess we can say now from talking with you, we have, you know, we have two types of power, internal, external, and but did you define power by any chance, or have you, you know?
My definition of power is the ability to manipulate resources. So external power is the ability to write a check for $1 million or hire 5,000 people. Internal power is the ability to control my thoughts, and when someone says something mean to me, I don't get upset. I don't. It doesn't bother me. That's not where I want to put my energy. The ability to set my time and my energy and say, in this time frame, I will achieve this and achieve it.
The ability to determine my thoughts and my responses to the external environment that's happening. Or, yeah,
choice
like that.
is a huge act of power. When you make a choice, when you make a choice, what you feel, what you believe, what you think, what you do, you have acted in power, no matter how small it is. And when people begin to work with this idea, they feel very powerful, even though in the outside world they still can't write a check for $1 million and they still can't hire 500 people, but all of a sudden they are powerful and they can determine more and more about what their life becomes.
Is that on your website, InPower.com?
It is.
And I like the idea of definition of power and put there, internal, external, and then put internal choice. I love that. Being choice is one of the definitions of internal power, because I would not have thought of that. Maybe intuitively we get to it eventually, but we don't state it.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, if you go to InPowerWomen.com, you'll see the 5 principles of internal power. And then if you dig deeper into InPowerCoaching.com, which is where I help people really work with these concepts in their life, you'll get into some of these concepts that we're talking about right now. But the 5 principles of internal power, I call empowerment.
Yeah, right. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Before that, is this where your glass ceiling story would fit about your own? Or should we wait until we talk about empowerment?
No, this is fine.
You were saying something about your own rise to,
Right. My glass ceiling, I'm calling it this, my glass ceiling story.
Sounds good to me.
It sounds like a good title, doesn't it?
Right.
I call it that because the glass ceiling means something to all of us. It's that part in an organization, the cultural barrier that keeps women from rising to certain ranks, right? To get above a certain level in the organization. If you go to Wikipedia or Google it, that's probably what you'll find. But that's not how I experienced it at all. And I came out of Fortune 100 corporations, Verizon before it was called Verizon, and General Motors, and I was on international executive committees. I was flying around the world with the most senior people in the company and watching them, and watching how they handled power and how the culture worked, and how people, men and women, got into that senior level. And then I went to internet startups in the late 90s and early 2000s, and I watched the cultural rules there. Very different and yet very similar. And the glass ceiling that I experienced, and I hit my head on, was not about men and women. It was about your willingness to give yourself completely to the company. And I had little kids, and I said, I don't want to do that. This is a values conflict. This isn't about me being kept out because I was a woman. I don't believe being a woman was helping me at certain levels, but I don't believe it was the reason I turned away. I became part of the brain drain. I became part of the, you know what, it's not worth it to me to achieve this kind of success because of the price that I could choose to pay and choose not to. And so I hit my head on the ceiling when I realized I'm not willing to play that game. And it wasn't a man's game. It was a man's game, but I felt I could have played it. I just didn't want to.
Yeah.
So I became a consultant and began my own InPower journey without realizing it way back then, 10 years ago, because I realized I'm still successful, I'm still powerful, I have a lot to offer. I'm not going to play the corporate game. I'm not going to play the internet startup game. What game am I going to play? And this is the game I ended up playing, which was being a consultant on my own and having a ton of fun, making good money, working with great people, and discovering my own InPower so that I could turn around and help other people discover it in themselves.
Oh, interesting. Gosh, that's a very important story because it also leads me to believe that maybe we use the term glass ceiling too broadly, or we don't define that enough because your glass ceiling, or what you say you hit, was really a matter of choice.
Yes, absolutely.
Where women don't think that a lot. It's, oh, the glass ceiling, it's been there, by men, and I can't break into it. But maybe we're looking at it the wrong way.
Well,
or talking about it the wrong way, rather than...
I do believe that there are cultural realities that we can't overcome by ourselves.
Right.
But the distinction that you're making, and I want to thank you for making it because you're helping me make my point, is the difference between looking at a problem and saying that's somebody else is doing that to me, versus taking your own personal responsibility for making your choice of how to deal with it. I took an empowered approach to dealing with it and said, forget this, I don't need this, and it worked out great. But there's another aspect to what you're talking about which I want to bring out too, about the glass ceiling. We all just talk about it as though it's a reality.
Yeah.
That makes it a reality. There's research I saw recently, it's actually just up on my blog, and it talks about what hiring managers look for at different levels in the organization. So at the entry level and at mid-level, what hiring managers are looking for and what people are interviewing and saying there are their strengths is about the same. I'm a hard worker, I have integrity, I'm smart. That's all the same. But when it gets to the executive level, hiring managers aren't looking for smart and integrity. They figure you wouldn't have gotten there if that's all they have.
Okay.
They want a global perspective. They want a strategic perspective. They want to see a variety of experience. They want to see that you can operate outside and across your expertise. Well, this is very interesting because men and women are failing this test because they don't understand what they need to be in the executive ranks. Well, how many women are looking at that and saying that's the glass ceiling? And they're not thinking about it they're not thinking about the job they want correctly. And men are doing this too. So the reason I want to bring that back to is that we just assume this glass ceiling is there and it becomes a reality. And if we get really smart, it's not there at all.
I see. That's very interesting. And it also helps in one sense to take away the blame because we're all in this, whether we're men or women, and we can't just say, oh, it's all the men keeping women from reaching the glass or breaking through the glass ceiling. It's the way we're looking at it and the words we're using to describe it. And you say, I really believe that words affect us so much, and they can become our reality.
Yes, and I choose to speak about men as our partners. And we have to establish a new partnership with men in some cases, but it's a partnership from the most personal levels all the way up to the most, senior executive levels.
That's great. Dana, we're going to go on to InPower Women and talk about rewriting the feminist narrative, which you've mentioned. And this has been so interesting that I can't believe we're ready for a break. So we're going to do that right after we come back.
Okay.
We'll break for a short public service announcement.
Packers. Viking. Packers. Viking. Viking.
Red state. Blue state. Vegan.
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
Downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities,
Live
our families,
united.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
Welcome back to It's a Woman's World. We're speaking with Dana Theus about InPower Women. Dana, your new blog, really, isn't it, InPowerWomen.com?
Yep.
And on that, you're rewriting the feminist narrative. I memorized these words, but I don't really know what it means. You've got to explain that.
Well, actually, that's part of the reason I put it out there was to get people to ask me that question.
Oh, okay.
So this is great. As I said, I started talking and writing about women's leadership over a year ago, and I started looking for other blogs and other writing that was in the same line. I wanted to learn, I wanted to play off of it. And I found a lot of great women's blogs out there, and even the ones who were trying to be empowering were, in my read of it, accidentally disempowering. And what I mean by that is they would cover research that talked about women's strengths, but they would say, well, women did this and men did that. And there's research out of Northwestern that shows that when women act like men leaders, they're perceived as unattractive. And so all of this research was trying to make us feel powerful and was actually making us feel less powerful. It was making me feel less powerful. So I started being very careful in my own writings and when I launched the site to speak in only positive terms, not about men or women, but men and women. And to be able to always take any piece of research, any reality that we were describing or thinking about, and think, what's the most powerful way a woman could experience this? So she had choice. When she finishes reading this, she understands where her power could come from and what her choice is. And I became very intentional in my writing about doing that, so that my goal is with this new site, InPowerWomen.com, whenever a woman comes to the site and leaves, they feel more powerful than when they came. So,
because of the words that you're using and the way that you're explaining power and empowerment.
And the way I'm framing the discussion. Yeah. No anger, no blame.
Yeah.
It's all about reality, what is it, and what can we do about it? And to give the readers more power in that situation.
Oh, great. And that exactly leads to the next question what do you mean by empowerment? Is I-N empowerment, and is that the same as empowerment, E-M empowerment?
And no, they're not the same. And the reason I chose I-N is to go back to this distinction between internal and external power. Empowerment, if I were to empower you, I would give you an external power. I'd say, you now have signing authority over a new budget. That's an empowerment. And empowerment is when you say, good, and I choose to use it like this. So it's the expression of external and internal power. So I choose empowerment because my goal is for the people I work with to feel empowered.
Empowered, right, inside.
Inside.
Which then can lead to external, as you were saying originally. In the first step we talked about to give us the strength and the confidence. Yeah.
Right.
And the choice.
And the choice.
Good.
Exactly.
I like that, yeah. So now, is empowerment just for professional women?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, when I first began to articulate this concept, it was working on the board of a local organization here, the District Alliance for Safe Housing, DASH. And they work with domestic violence survivors.
Okay.
But they take a very important distinction in terms of how they deal with these women who've been through hell.
Yeah.
And instead of treating them as victims, which the typical social service model often does, and say, you've been victimized, we're going to tell you, we're going to protect you, and we're going to tell you you must come within these hours, you can't bring your children, you can't bring your teenage boy children with you. They accidentally gave, or not the DASH, but traditional social service would give these women a Sophie's choice between, I can return to my abuser and have a roof over my head and have my family intact, or I can isolate myself and, be protected. And more were choosing to be back in their abusive situations. Well,
not because the social services wanted to do that, but basically that was the only model that they realized or could work with or felt was working at the time.
That's right. And it was looking at external power. Oh, you've been abused externally. We're going to protect you externally. But they were impoverishing them internally. Dash turned that on its ear and said, no, you can come and go as you please. You can bring your children, and you have the responsibility for choosing the services that you need to begin to heal. And all of a sudden, women started healing faster and were able to get back on track with their lives because they were being treated with respect, and their InPower was being honored and noticed and supported and nurtured. And I was on their board, and I was watching this, and I'm like, that is fascinating. That's not just, that's what I had been finding with professional women, but here are women in a completely different situation being just as successful with that concept. And I was thrilled, and so I'm very happy to be affiliated with them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I know I talk a lot about volunteerism, and so this is one place that you are helping as one of your volunteer passions, in addition to that fits right into your InPower Women.
Exactly.
Oh, great. That's good. Yeah. And I guess I wanted to talk about the women effect.
The woman effect.
The woman effect, okay. And you're promoting that, and that sounds fascinating, but that's another new narrative.
New narrative,
that
yes,
you
exactly.
need to explain.
I have to invent all this stuff. The woman effect is my term for something that has been coming out of research for the last 5 years. On InPowerWomen.com, we've indexed over 65 studies that have been done on women in business and leadership. Okay. And about 17 to 20 of them speak about the impact that women are having on their businesses. And the stat that you need to remember is that when women are in senior leadership positions, in the C-suite or on the board or both, at a percentage of 30% or above, that organization performs better across 10 different metrics of performance, all the way from profitability to sustainability. There's 10 different metrics. I can't even remember them all. And it's been now documented and verified by several different organizations. And people are talking about it as, you know, women's leadership. Women need to be on boards. And I looked at that and I said, what's happening there? There's something happening there, and I'm calling it the woman effect. And I'm beginning to research it right now through these secondary studies, you know, indexing the studies and beginning to look at it. And I've identified 4 different reasons I think that women are having such positive impacts on their companies.
Yeah.
And one of it is because they're good leaders. Women are very capable at having multiple different leadership styles, and because we're perceptive interpersonally, we know when to use the one that's going to be most effective at that point. And Stanford has shown this, that we're good at that, and we do it well, and it works in the business environment. We're very good workers. We're very results-oriented. We want things to work, and so we're very dedicated to making things work. Sometimes at the expense of our own, you know, promoting ourselves, which is a problem, but we really are good at what we do. We're very good investors. We take a very considered approach to risk, and we have a broader sense of what the returns can be. So we don't just look for financial return. We look for higher employee retention, greater customer satisfaction. All those things mean success to us. And finally, the men are helping us. The 2010 census shows that more and more men are staying home, and sometimes they're doing it as a house husband, and sometimes they're just being more flexible, so their wife, you know, can go past the glass ceiling that I chose not to go past, you know, and go ahead and dedicate, you know, more and more of their efforts to their career. And this is wonderful. This is this new partnership with men that I'm talking about. Yeah. And so far I've identified those 4 factors are contributing to this ability for women to really contribute in business to a very highly measurable degree in terms of, you know, profitability, cost of sales going down. They've got all these different metrics. It's just amazing. So I want to get the word out because I started talking to people about this, women colleagues, and they were like, really? I didn't know that. I'm like, you didn't know it either? I guess I need to get the word out. So that's why I'm coining the phrase and starting to promote it.
Yeah, with the women effect, because I'm on the board and we were talking about how do we get more women to be on boards. Yeah. And so this gives the reasons that we can give to organizations to say these are the effect that women can have provided when they're on your board.
That's
You
right.
had another story of someone who you had consulted with, I think, a success story.
Yeah.
Wanted you to throw that in. What was that? I don't recall.
This goes back to the empowerment principle. A very successful woman executive that I was working with on a coaching basis was doing great in her career, great family life. One person made her feel this small. And it was someone that didn't report to her directly, but somebody else. And she began to notice that her power diminished when she went into meetings with this person. You know, she'd be in a meeting with the CEO and all of her peers, and then this person would come in, and she would have a lot of difficulty in that environment. And she said, I can't do this. This is hurting my career. I have to get control of this situation. And we gave her a tool that I call speaking truth to power, which is the ability to find your authentic voice and speak your authentic voice, letting go of what other people are going to think about it. And she started practicing it with this individual. And she said, I can't believe the fear I was living in, and I'm over that now, and I will never do that again. I will never go there again. And she feels dramatically, more powerful, and yet nothing externally has changed. She still has the same title and the same salary and the same signing authority, but she has a confidence now because she's discovered this little InPower trick that was holding her back that now gives her tons of confidence with this individual and now others. And
can you just tell me how I would find my authentic voice? Is there
I have a 5-week coaching course on that.
Yeah.
So
no, but kind of a little capsule of something to be a tease for people in case they want to work with you, or in case they want to just do some research on their own or do some reading, which would help them.
I would say I call it the silence trick. And it's a place to start to become sensitive to how you're connected to what other people will think of you. So oftentimes people, not just women, but especially women, will start something with, well, I may not be the expert in the room, or I may not know as much as you guys, or I may not know what I'm talking about, or whatever, but, and then they'll say their statement.
I see.
Saying that kind of proviso up front is a way of telling people that you really don't know what you're talking about, or you don't believe in what you're talking about. And so the way that I advise people to get tuned into this is to, when they hear themselves saying that, choose silence. So instead of saying, well, I may not know what I'm talking about, just say, I think that we should do this. And watch how people react to you. And what will happen is, people don't react to you like you don't know what you're talking about. You're making that up in your mind. And so when you become aware that you're prejudging what other people are going to say to you, and just don't prejudge them.
I see.
All of a sudden,
give yourself
more credibility.
Give yourself a minute to decide what you're going to say without saying something that shows you to be uncomfortable or not confident.
That's right.
Yeah.
Choose not to be powerless. And then the power that you bring with you automatically flows into the conversation.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. That's great. That's great.
That I call it the silence trick.
Yeah.
Choose silence instead of something powerless.
Yeah. And usually, I was just thinking, as we're talking, at the end, I usually say to somebody, give us one tip that you want to leave people with, and yours sounds like it should be.
That's a good one.
Yeah, yeah.
I think the one tip is, that's a good example of it, but the one tip would be, is just watch in your own life for when you feel powerful and when you feel powerless, and watch what's going on. And then choose not to be powerless whenever you can, in the smallest thing or the biggest thing. And once you've started doing that, you've started your journey towards more power. Yeah. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
I've learned so much, and I hope our audience has learned along with me. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This was fun.
I hope you've enjoyed meeting our guest, Dana Theus, as much as I have, and you're empowered by her passions. If you know a woman who's gone above and beyond to contribute to our community, please email us. We're womensworldtv@aol.com. Remember, it's a woman's world. I'm Carolyn Bruna. See you next time.